The dense canopy of Aokigahara, known infamously as Japan's suicide forest, casts long shadows that seem to whisper secrets to those who dare to listen. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, a natural perfume that does little to mask the underlying aura of despair. I came here as an urban explorer, drawn by the stories and the mystery, seeking to document the untouched beauty and the tragic history of this place. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found. My footsteps were muffled by the thick layer of fallen leaves as I ventured deeper into the forest, the GPS on my phone my only tether to the outside world. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant cry of a bird. It was in this silence that I first noticed them, personal belongings neatly arranged on the forest floor. A child's toy, a pair of glasses, a wallet, each with a note tucked beside it. My heart pounded as I approached, the sense of intrusion overwhelming. The notes were final goodbyes, messages of love and regret, penned by those who had come here to end their lives. The weight of sorrow was palpable, a heavy cloak that seemed to press down on me. The forest around me felt alive, watching, the whispering shadows growing louder, as if the trees themselves were mourning. I tried to rationalize what I was seeing, to distance myself from the emotional toll, but the more I read, the more I felt an unshakable connection to the strangers whose stories I was uncovering. The decision to leave was sudden, a primal urge to escape the suffocating grief that clung to the air. As I retraced my steps, the forest seemed to resist my departure, the path I had taken now unfamiliar, the shadows lengthening. The climax of my experience was not a jump scare or a ghostly apparition, but the realization that I was utterly alone in a place where so many had chosen to be alone in their final moments. The psychological terror was in the silence, in the notes, in the understanding of the depth of human despair. I emerged from Aokigahara changed, the whispering shadows following me long after I had left the forest behind. The experience left me with more questions than answers, a lingering unease that haunts me to this day. What drives a person to such a place? And why had I, an outsider, been allowed to glimpse into their final moments? The forest keeps its secrets, and the whispers of the shadows remain just that, whispers, forever on the edge of understanding. Break time equals 5s, greater than the dense canopy of Aokigahara forest, known infamously as Japan's suicide forest, stretched endlessly before me, a labyrinth of towering trees and twisted roots. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves underfoot. I had come here to capture the haunting beauty of this place, to document the eerie tranquility that belied its dark reputation. My camera was my shield, a way to distance myself from the stories of despair that clung to the trees like the morning mist. But as I ventured deeper, the forest seemed to close in around me, the shadows lengthening with every step. The light filtering through the leaves was dim, casting the world in shades of green and gray. It was then that I first heard it, a whisper, so faint I thought it might have been the wind. But then it came again, clearer this time, calling my name. My blood ran cold. I was alone, or at least, I should have been. The whisper didn't come from any direction in particular, it seemed to emanate from the forest itself. I tried to rationalize it, a trick of the mind, perhaps, or the sound of my own breath echoing back at me. But the voice grew more insistent, more personal, speaking words I couldn't quite make out, but that filled me with an inexplicable dread. My hands trembled as I raised my camera, snapping pictures blindly, as if capturing the scene could somehow make sense of what was happening. The whispers multiplied, overlapping in a cacophony of hushed tones that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I turned, trying to find a path back, but the trees seemed to have shifted, their trunks now forming an impenetrable wall. The fear was paralyzing, a primal terror that rooted me to the spot. And then, as suddenly as they had started, the whispers stopped. The silence was deafening. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I ran, stumbling over roots and through thick underbrush, not caring about the direction as long as it was away from that place. When I finally emerged from the forest, gasping for breath, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ground. I looked back at the tree line, half expecting to see something, or someone, watching me. But there was nothing. Just the forest, silent and still. Back in my hotel room, I reviewed the photos I had taken. Most were blurry, the result of my shaking hands. But in one, just visible among the trees, was a shadow that didn't quite match the others. It was shaped like a person, standing just beyond the edge of the frame. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a pareidolia my frightened mind had conjured. But as I lay in bed that night, the whispers started again, this time in the darkness of my room. And I knew then that the forest hadn't let me go after all. Break time equals 5s, greater than the dense canopy of Aokigahara, Japan's infamous suicide forest, swallows the sunlight whole, casting the world beneath into an eternal twilight. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, a constant reminder of the forest's silent witnesses to countless tragedies. I came here out of curiosity, drawn by the tales of those who wandered in but never returned. Now, as I step deeper into the green gloom, my compass begins to spin wildly, its needle dancing as if possessed. The magnetic anomalies of Aokigahara are well documented, but knowing this does little to quell the rising panic in my chest. The trees seem to close in around me, their gnarled branches whispering secrets in a language just beyond my understanding. My breath comes in short, sharp gasps, the sound loud in the oppressive silence. I try to retrace my steps, but every path looks the same, a labyrinth of shadows and despair. The forest plays tricks on my mind, the shadows moving just at the edge of my vision, always disappearing when I turn to look. The whispers grow louder, a chorus of lost souls urging me to join them. I run, my heart pounding, my legs burning with exertion, but no matter how far or fast I go, the forest only seems to grow thicker, the shadows deeper. The realization hits me like a physical blow, I am not alone here. Something is watching me, something ancient and hungry. The last thing I see before the darkness takes me is a pair of glowing eyes, filled with a malice that is all too human. The forest claims another soul, and the whispers grow louder, waiting for the next lost wanderer to join their ranks. Break time equals 5s, greater than the air in Aokigahara is thick, not just with the moisture of the forest but with something else, something intangible that clings to your skin like the remnants of a bad dream. As an investigator drawn to the forest's infamous reputation, I told myself it was the history that pulled me here, the stories of those who had walked in and never walked out. But standing at the edge of the dense foliage, the weight of the place presses down on me, a physical force that makes my breath come in short, sharp gasps. The trees loom, their trunks twisted in ways that seem almost deliberate, as if they're leaning in to listen. The sound of my own footsteps is muffled by the thick undergrowth, and the silence that follows is oppressive, broken only by the occasional whisper of the wind, or at least, that's what I tell myself it is. My fingers tighten around the flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom but doing little to dispel the unease that has settled in my chest. The further I walk, the more the forest seems to close in around me, the path behind disappearing as if the trees themselves are shifting to block my retreat. Then, I see it, a tent, its fabric sagging and weathered, the zipper partially open as though someone had left in a hurry. The inside is sparse, a sleeping bag unrolled, a backpack with its contents spilled across the floor. And then, the journal. It lies open, the pages warped as if by moisture, but the substance that stains them is sticky to the touch, dark under the beam of my flashlight. The last entry is written in a frantic scrawl, the letters growing larger, more desperate, until they stop. Mid-sentence. The pen lies beside it, as if dropped in haste. My heart pounds in my ears, a steady drumbeat of dread. The rational part of my brain scrambles for explanations, an animal attack, a sudden storm, anything but the alternative. But then, from somewhere deep within the forest, comes a sound so faint I might have imagined it. A whisper, maybe, or a sigh. It's enough to send me stumbling back, the journal clutched in my hand, the pages leaving a tacky residue on my fingers. I tell myself I'll come back in the morning, with more light, more people. But as I turn to leave, the flashlight flickers, and for a moment, just a moment, I see them, shadows, moving between the trees, their shapes indistinct but undeniably there. And then the light dies, plunging me into darkness. The whispers grow louder, closer, until they're all around me, a cacophony of voices that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I run, branches tearing at my clothes, my breath coming in ragged sobs. I don't stop until I'm out of the forest, until the first light of dawn touches the horizon. But even then, standing in the safety of the open air, I can still hear them, the whispering shadows of Aokigahara, calling me back. Break time equals 5s, greater than the dense canopy of Aokigahara, Japan's infamous suicide forest, swallows the daylight whole, leaving only a dim, eerie glow to guide the way. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, a natural perfume that does little to mask the underlying sense of despair that permeates the area. As a volunteer, my purpose here is grim but necessary, to search for those who have wandered into the forest with no intention of returning. The weight of this task hangs heavy on my shoulders, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the depths of human despair. Today, however, the forest seems quieter than usual, the usual chorus of wildlife replaced by an oppressive silence that sets my nerves on edge. My footsteps are muffled by the thick undergrowth, each step a deliberate effort to move forward despite the growing sense of unease. Then, I see them, a pair of shoes, neatly placed at the base of a tree, their toes pointing ominously towards the heart of the forest. The sight sends a chill down my spine, a visceral reaction to the unspoken message they convey. It's a common sign here, a silent declaration of someone's final journey. The realization hits me like a physical blow, a mix of sadness and urgency flooding my senses. I know what I must do, but the forest seems to resist my efforts, the shadows stretching longer, the whispers of the wind sounding almost like voices urging me to turn back. My heart pounds in my chest, a drumbeat of fear and determination as I press on, the line between the living and the dead feeling thinner with every step. The further I go, the more the forest seems to come alive, the trees themselves seeming to watch, to judge. I find myself questioning every sound, every shadow, the rational part of my mind battling against the primal fear that grips me. Then, in the distance, a faint sound, a sob, a whisper, it's hard to tell, but it's enough to freeze me in my tracks. The air grows colder, the silence more profound, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. I call out, my voice shaky, but there's no response, only the echo of my own words swallowed by the trees. The sense of being watched intensifies, an unseen presence making the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I know I should leave, that no good can come from staying, but the thought of someone out there, lost and alone, keeps me rooted to the spot. The decision is taken for me when a sudden gust of wind sends a flurry of leaves swirling around me, the sound like 1,000 hushed voices speaking all at once. The message is clear, I am not welcome here. With a final, regretful glance into the depths of the forest, I turn back, the weight of the unsaved heavy on my conscience. The journey out is no less terrifying, the forest seeming to mock my retreat with every step. By the time I reach the edge, the sun is setting, casting long shadows that seem to reach out towards me. I look back one last time, the forest now silent and still, as if nothing had happened. But the shoes remain, a stark reminder of the lives lost to the shadows of Aokigahara, and the mysteries that remain buried within its depths. The experience leaves me with more questions than answers, a lingering unease that follows me long after I've left the forest behind. The whispering shadows of Aokigahara have spoken, and their tales are far from over. Break time equals 5s, greater than the dense canopy of Aokigahara, Japan's infamous suicide forest, swallows the daylight whole, leaving only a dim, greenish glow to navigate by. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a natural mausoleum that seems to breathe with the wind. My name is Alex, a photographer drawn to the forest's eerie beauty, seeking to capture its silent stories through my lens. Despite the warnings, the local legends of spirits and lost souls only fueled my curiosity, a mix of fascination and a naive belief that I was just here for the scenery. The initial walk was peaceful, almost meditative, with the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional bird call breaking the silence. But as I ventured deeper, the atmosphere shifted. The sounds of life faded, replaced by an oppressive stillness that made my heart beat loud in my ears. I stopped to take a photo of a particularly haunting grove, the trees twisted into grotesque shapes by time and the elements. The camera's shutter sounded like a gunshot in the quiet, and for a moment, I felt a chill run down my spine, a primal sense of being watched. Shaking it off as nerves, I continued, but the feeling lingered, a shadow at the edge of my vision that disappeared when I turned to look. The light was fading, and I decided to head back, the path now unfamiliar in the growing dark. That's when I heard it, a whisper, so soft I thought it was the wind, but the words were clear. "Why did you come?" My blood turned to ice. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, revealing nothing but the endless trees. The rational part of my brain screamed pareidolia, my mind playing tricks in the fear and the fading light. But another part, the part that felt the weight of unseen eyes, knew better. I quickened my pace, the forest now a labyrinth with no exit. The whispers grew, a chorus of voices speaking in hushed tones, some pleading, others angry. My camera, forgotten in my panic, slipped from my grip, the sound of it hitting the ground echoing like a death knell. I didn't stop to retrieve it. The edge of the forest seemed miles away, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I ran, branches clawing at my clothes like desperate hands. When I finally broke free into the open air, the relief was short-lived. Back at my hotel, reviewing the photos, I found it, the shadowy figure standing among the trees, its form indistinct but undeniably there, where no one had been. The debate between pareidolia and something more sinister raged in my mind, but the fear in my heart knew the truth. Aokigahara had shown me its secrets, and now, in the quiet of my room, the whispers followed, a constant reminder that some places are best left unexplored, their stories untold. The photograph was deleted, but the memory, the feeling of being watched, of being spoken to by the unseen, remains. Aokigahara's shadows whisper still, and sometimes, in the silence of the night, I find myself listening.